Hello, welcome to Mumblecast, the oddly structured, poorly researched podcast extravaganza. My name is Liam, and as always, I'm here with my co-host, Kayla. Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
That time, so last week...
I went too slow. Today I was like, I'm going to get
fast.
it right there.
Oh no, we've laughed too much already, and it's going to be too loud. Oh no. I don't know, I'll fix it in post. How are you today?
I'm good, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How's your week been?
Good. I've done a lot, actually, but...
What have you done? Do tell.
Well, a lot of, business stuff, a lot of coaching. Coaching's been a lot of it. School. Mm-hmm. That's really it.
That's fair enough. That's tough.
What about you?
The usual. Work and training, whether it be CrossFit or normal work. Both of those things, actually. Not much free time this week. All the weekend. And there won't be much this weekend either because I've got to go to San Antonio.
Oh, yeah, for rugby, right?
Rugby. I'm like, ugh. Well,
why?
I don't want to drive 4 hours or so to go play rugby and drive 4 hours back. I'm not going to stay over. I had a plan to stay over, but that didn't kind of work out. So I'm going to be just going to drive there in the morning, drive back, I think. That'll be fair enough. Rugby's rugby. It's all good.
Will you get to play the full time this time? Have you been to enough practices where they're not going to be like, no?
I don't know. I don't know how they judge it, to be honest, you know? And so listeners, none of my rugby people listen, so it's fine. I can say this. 2 weeks ago, I got 15 minutes out of an 80-minute match, and I'm one of the most experienced rugby players on the pitch. Mm-hmm. I'm one of the fittest on the pitch, and I would say I'm one of the better players on the pitch. Mm-hmm. And I don't know why they'd give me 50 minutes in a game that's so close that can be decided by one or two good players. And we lost that game, and I got really annoyed. I was like, if you just put me on earlier, I know we could have done better, but that's just maybe.
So they put you on at the end?
Yeah, they put me on in last 15 minutes. I was like, you should give someone like me a half at least. I don't know. And you should give anybody a half. I played another game on Saturday for the second tier team because they needed numbers and the first team weren't playing. And there was people who turned up who didn't get a game at all. And we beat that team by 60 points. So everyone should have got on, but they didn't put everyone on. I'm not a fan of that, especially when it's social rugby. There should be a level of everyone gets a game. But hey-ho. That's just what happened, I guess.
How many players... Eventually we need to talk about rugby. Is that what we're doing?
That's exactly what we're doing.
Oh, okay.
So, I didn't tell Kayla today about what topic we're doing, but today I am going to just be doing a lot of the explanation, and we're going to talk about rugby.
Oh, perfect, because I was just about to ask a question. Yes,
well, there's going to be a few questions, and a lot of this is going to be hard to detail about pictures, but I'm going to try and explain it as best I can. So in that case...
let's get ready to mumble. I can't believe I guessed it.
I know, that's great, actually. So, I'm going to start off talking a little bit about rugby, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about our competition, which is currently going on in Europe called Six Nations. Okay. It is one that happens as a yearly competition, and we'll get into that in a moment. Mm-hmm. So, what do you know about rugby?
I know that you play it.
Okay, that's a start.
I know that there is a ball that's in the shape of a watermelon.
What kind of watermelons are you eating?
Okay, so there's this one time I was watching this video. I don't remember if I showed it to a friend of ours or a friend of ours showed it to me, but we were watching it together, and I was like, oh, look at this sheep playing with this ball that looks like a watermelon. Yeah. And then she was like she thought I was kidding. And I was like, what? She's like, this is a joke, haha. And I'm like, okay. No. And she was like, that's a rugby ball. And I was like, oh. Oh. Okay.
That's quite funny.
But it looked like a watermelon.
I don't know if she would have known that prior to 5 years ago anyway. So
I don't know.
Yes. So, a lot of Americans, rugby's gradually building up in America, but it's not really been here for too long. Well, it hasn't, not mainstream. But rugby actually started in the early 1800s. Mm-hmm. So, and there's an origin story, which is a little bit, people aren't 100% sure how accurate it is, but it's a nice wee story to get it going in. The foundation of rugby did come from this place. So, there apparently comes from an incident which happened to in a school in England in a location called Rugby, where a man called William Webb Ellis is quite a big known name in rugby, got sick of playing football, and he picked up the football, the round soccer ball, and started to run with it.
The watermelon ball?
Yes, the watermelon. Well, no, it was at that point it was the round soccer ball.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they hadn't created it. So this is the initiation of it. So this is the story which probably isn't true, but he says he picked it up and ran down the field, and this has become the said story of how rugby started. And from there, this school developed the rules for rugby. Mm-hmm. And from there, so the rugby football stems from the form of the game played at rugby school, which the former people introduced to the university. So they started it. They created almost like boys creating a game to play themselves, to play themselves, and it kind of spawned from there. So this was back in the early 1800s. So
okay.
It's quite interesting how it's not that old. I suppose it's older than some of the sports, but and it was picked up from there. So universities started playing it, especially in some of the big private schools in the UK. So Cambridge and Eton, Oxford, these type of places started playing the rules, started playing it. And now the rules slightly changed as it went from university to school and all these sort of things. But it started sort of developing at different places around there. In the early development of the rugby, the first written laws of the school came from the rugby school in 1845, so about 22 years later. And then that was followed by the Cambridge rules, which were drawn up about 3 or 4 years later from that. And then, so we were looking at about mid-1800s, where the rules are sort of coming into formation. Now, the rules constantly change, but this is where it started. This is where it sort of initially came from. And then in 1863, a further 20 years later, there was a formation of the Rugby Football Union. So this was like this association that sort of runs rugbies and stuff. At this point, or a couple of years later, in 1895, rugby actually split. Now, this is where it's going to get confusing, and I'm going to focus on rugby union. There's two versions of the game, two main versions of the game of rugby. You've got rugby union and you've got rugby league.
Okay, I'm on rugby union. So
that's
reading.
And it gets confused because you have like the major rugby league, but that's union rugby compared to you've got. So this is like a competitions and stuff where you've actually got rugby league, but we're not going to talk about rugby league at all. We're going to talk about rugby union entirely.
Okay.
Okay. We can maybe go over the rules if you have questions, but rugby union is what we're going to work on, and that's what it kind of came from. So in 1800s, from 23 all the way up to late 1800s, rugby was played throughout very different schools and universities. And the very first international rugby game was played on March 27th, 1871, between Scotland and England in Edinburgh, and Scotland won. Oddly, we were won by 1-0, which doesn't make any sense in today's rules.
Okay.
But the score back then was 1-0, basically.
Okay.
Following other teams started playing internationally from like 1881. Ireland and Wales had teams that were represented. 1883, and then so by 1883, Scotland, England, Ireland, and Wales, the home nations of Great Britain, all had international teams, and then a championship begun, which was called the Home Nations Championship. It's between these four teams. That will come into prevalence later on, but so that's the foundation of rugby. Essentially, it came from soccer. People got bored. There's also things about, they had a deflated ball and people started running with it, blah, blah, blah. But
okay.
I don't know too much about the initial rules, like how they are back then, but I know a lot about how it's played today. Any questions so far?
No.
Okay.
Well, because I think you're going to get into my questions in just a minute. So
we can kind of naturally spawn into them. But so, rugby itself. We'll talk about now the game, the team, and the setup. So, a rugby team is split up into 15 players.
Okay.
15 players for both sides.
Are there positions?
Yes.
Okay.
So, unlike soccer and American football, positions are numbered in rugby. So, if you're starting on the field, if you play a certain position, you'll always have that number. So, it's not like you can have, like David Beckham has 23, or Michael Jordan had 23, or LeBron James has 23, or whoever else has any number, you know. Or like American football, I think you have a set amount of numbers for defense, a set amount of numbers for special teams and for offense. But in rugby, you have your 15 players that have 1 to 15 on their backs, and then you have your subs, which 16 to 22, 23, depending on what championship or what kind of league you're in. They're broken down again from that 15 into two other segments. So you've got forwards and backs. Okay? The forwards traditionally tend to be the bigger boys who typically are a little bit heavier weight. As again, this is traditionally heavier weight, a little bit not quite as fast, not quite as agile, but a little bit stronger, bigger, and create a lot more power. Then you've got the backs, which tend to be a little bit more, most people say skillful within the game, a little bit faster, a little bit more nimble. Following? Mm-hmm. Okay, so the forwards is 8 of them, and then you've got 7 backs, which equal up to 15. The 8 forwards are broken down then again into different positions. So I want you to draw it in this format. So you've got 1, 2, 3, your forwards.
Okay.
And you've got one.
Is it like half a field? Like half?
Yeah, just you can draw half a field, yep. So on the left-hand side, okay, and down a little bit, so underneath, we'll go underneath half. Okay. Draw one circle. That's going to be your loose head prop. That's number 1. Right beside that, you're going to put number 2. A circle, so right beside, even closer, because we're going to, there we go. Number 2, and that's going to be your hooker, so you can write it above. And then beside that will be number 3, and that's called a tight head prop. So they tend to be, 1 and 2 tend to be the bigger, stouter boys. Mm-hmm. Again, in modern rugby it's changed slightly, but they tend to be real big boys. The middle guy, the hooker, tends to be a little bit shorter, a little bit smaller, but still a pretty strong guy. Mm-hmm. Behind them, so like in between the spaces, you've got 4 and 5. Both of them are either called second row or lock. Okay? And this is your second row forwards, both locks. These boys tend to be really tall. So these are your 6'4", 6'8", some of them guys. These are really tall guys, long legs, long limbs entirely, big, heavy guys. Not necessarily the most nimble, but strong and tall. Then behind them, so slightly to the left of the 4, but not quite fully behind, you've got 6. Yep. Behind the 4 and 5, you've got 8.
So like here?
Yep. That's your number 8. And then on the opposite side, you've got 7. So 6 is your blind side flanker. The 8 is literally just called your number 8. And then 7 is your open side flanker. Now these tend to be a good hybrid. So they're all very similar but slightly different. 7 tends to be quicker, faster, but like strong and powerful. He's your good crossfitter. You know, that's like all round. I play 6 or 7. So he's like your all round, fast, kind of aggressive, about the field, fit as fuck type player. Mm-hmm. You've got your 8 who's very similar but a little bit bigger in stature. He's a bit stronger, tends to be a bit tougher. Mm-hmm. Okay, and then you've got 6 who's a mix between 7 and 8, really. Okay. This is, again, traditionally, it's not always the case for every team. So that's your forward pack. They do the majority of what we're going to talk about later, rucking and mauling and contact. Not all the time, I'm sure backs would say otherwise, but they do the majority of contact, and they start all the set plays, which again, we'll talk about later. Your backs. Your number 9 stands right behind the scrum, basically. So between 7 and 8, about 5 metres back. So like right a circle, here? Yep, you can put a 9. He's called your scrum half. So these are your backs now. You've got 10 who stands to the right of him and back, like a metre or 2, well, depending more, but on your drawing. And he's called your fly half or your fly half or 10. What else do we call him? A standoff occasionally as well. And he's your, so 9's the link between the forwards and the backs, and your 10's like the decision maker. He tends to be, if Tom Brady's the quarterback who makes all the decisions or all the moves, he'll tend to be your decision maker in the backs. Okay. What's going to happen? Outside him, you've got 12 and 13.
So here?
Yep, 12 there and like 13 just beside him, essentially, yep. They're called centres. You've got inside centre and outside centre. You can probably guess which one's which. You've got one more outside that, number 14, and he's called... Here? Yep, he's called your right wing. Now, if you go flip that complete to the other side, and you put another wee circle, is that in line at the 14, but on the other side of the page? Mm-hmm. Yep, that's going to be your 11, and he's your left wing. And then behind them all, or essentially behind the 12, 13, you've got one more, and he's number 15, and he's called your fullback. Okay, so that formation you've set up is the scrum formation, where you have the forwards in that sort of pack position, and then you have the backs spread out across the field. So usually that scrum will be if it's been like a 5 metre gap space, and then the backs will be spread out over the field, and we'll play from there. So that's your initial team setup. Forwards, bigger boys, carry the ball, typically, carry the ball in a tight situation more often, a bit more involved in the breakdowns, which again we'll talk about. In the backs, the ones that create the speed, create the plays, they add the flair to the game. Okay. Following.
Yeah, I'm looking at pictures right now.
Okay, cool. With these players, they'll be obviously against another 15, and you tend to mark up similar. You tend to mark up similar to your opposition. Like you try not, because you want a mismatch. So you want the fast boys beside the slow boys, but that doesn't always happen. You tend to line up equally.
And they line up like this, where they're all like huddled
So that's
like
a
that?
scrum situation. So there's two main types of breakdown in rugby. One is called a scrum, one's called a line out. If the ball goes out of bounds on the sidelines, it's called you have a line out. So whatever team either carried the ball out, threw the ball out, or kicked the ball out in open play, the opposite team gets the line out. Okay? In that situation, the forwards line up side by side. Okay? And the hooker throws the ball in. When he throws it in, there's a combination of different moves and patterns where the line-out jumpers will jump up, grab the ball, pass it back down to the 9, who then sends it to the backs, typically. Does that make sense? So one team will defend and try and get up in front to stop that from happening. The other team are usually faster, and because they've called the play, they know what's happening.
Okay.
It's very similar to your American football line up, but they're facing sideways and facing like out towards the sidelines. Does that make sense?
Are there no helmets worn?
No, we don't have helmets. We don't. So
This does not look very safe.
Good questions for Americans. So we don't wear helmets. Some people wear scrum hats, like myself included. That's usually to help a little bit of impact on the head and to help get cauliflower ears, like you see in wrestling and stuff. We don't wear cups. We don't wear any other pads. We wear gum shields, and that's it. Or mouth guards, and that's it. It's fine. Honestly, you don't get hurt. So I'll come to the kind of differences between that and American football a little bit later. The second type of set play, which you were looking at just there, is called your scrum. Now, this is really hard to detail, so I'm not going to talk too much about it, but essentially, all 8 players interlock with the heads between each other's bodies. We get into a nice low kind of
Like
a
huddle.
low flat position huddle type thing, and essentially, if you ever get your fists and move your fists in to lock the fingers and push into each other, that's essentially what we're doing. Okay? And once you've hit and made contact, you hold for a second, the ball is thrown in between the middle, and then you'll push against each other. The hooker is the person who's hooking the ball back in the middle. Everyone else is trying to push to get over the ball, to get the ball to the back. The ball will go back to the 8 at the back if a successful scrum, and either the 8 can pick and run with it, or more traditionally the 9 will take it and again pass out to the backs. Following so far?
I just kind of want to see this in action at this
So
point.
you have to come and watch me sometime. So these are what we call set plays. However, unlike American football, rugby is played is open play. If the ball has not been knocked up, if a stoppage hasn't been created, which is a knock on, where the ball rolls, hits off your body or your hands, or everyone goes forward, or if there hasn't been some sort of foul, it's open play. So what happens is someone will take the ball in, get tackled, they'll try and present the ball back to your own team. So you'll run forward, get tackled, you'll try and push the ball back to a position where your team can get it. While that's happening though, people will essentially what we call ruck over you to try and gain yards and either get the ball or protect the ball so your team can use it. Does that make sense?
The ruck over part doesn't.
So it's hard to explain, but essentially if I'm tackling, I'll try and if I get tackled to the floor, that tackler has to let go of me initially, and then we have to fight for control over the ball. The ball becomes the gain line. Okay? If the person can ruck over me, so essentially step over me and get their feet in front of the ball, that means they've created the gain line with the ball and their team can come up to that point.
Okay.
Okay, but if we can protect the ball and keep it at the back of our feet, that attacking team cannot cross that line or get up to that line. They have to stay on their gain line, which is the back foot of the ruck. So if you have like a ruck and you've created like 2 men deep, they have to stay behind their man, their last man, and we have to stay behind ours.
Okay.
That becomes like the onside line.
Yeah.
But if you can get over the ball, then you can
New
steal the
yards
ball
or whatever.
and you've got slightly extra yards.
Okay.
So that's open play, and that happens, and we call it phases. So you'll run through as many phases as you can until some stoppage in plays happened. When that typically is either a penalty or a foul. A foul is typically something like a knock-on, as I talked about, where they'll hit the ball and it'll roll forward. Penalty is when you do something illegal. We're not going to go into penalties because that's a whole different world.
Yeah.
This is just the basic run-through.
How do you score points?
So I'm going to go over one more rule and then we're going to talk about points.
Okay.
All right, so the last rule is the ball can only be thrown backwards. So the ball can, and sideways, but most of the time people say backwards. So unlike American football where it gets thrown forwards, then backwards from there, we can only ever throw backwards.
Okay.
So you, as an attacking player, you always want to be behind the person in front of you or who's got the ball so they can pass you the ball. If you're ever in front, you're offside, and basically you're useless in the game.
Okay.
You can kick it forward. That's obviously allowed if it comes off your foot. But any other way the ball goes forward, it's not come from your foot, or deliberate foot forward, it is considered a knock-on, and that's where you have that breakdown. So it's always pass backwards, which is an interesting way when you try to get forward, to get backwards. It forces you to run the ball forwards rather than launch it forward and just be in the right position. So that's the last rule I was going to go over there. There's so many other rules, but I think that's probably the main one when it comes to kind of learning initially in rugby.
These rugby hats look funny.
Yeah. They're just like wee foam honeycombs. Like there's a company called Canterbury that make a really good one, and it's got a honeycomb structure, and it's honestly, it's saved my head from so many concussions. It's great.
It doesn't even look like it has that much padding. Ooh,
Yeah.
But at least your ear doesn't like that.
Yeah, exactly. You see some of the ears. Okay, scoring. The way you score in rugby is you have a pitch is essentially between 100 and 144 meters long. Not 144 yards, which is about basically around 100 meters. And it has to be about 74 yards wide, which is basically the same size as a soccer field. That's what you're looking at,
Okay.
pitch-wise. Well, we call it a pitch or a field. You
mean,
guys call it field, I guess.
A pitch would be like Quidditch, so I'm down with that.
Yes, well, that's obviously probably where it come from, considering. Yeah, so the playing field is 144 meters long maximum. You very rarely see that. Typically around 100 meters, and then 70 meters wide. Again, this was initially done in yards, so it does vary. Like we played some pitches that are a lot smaller than that. At the end of that 100 meters, you have what we call try line, and the ball has to be placed down over that line with downward pressure while in control of that ball for it to count as a try.
That is a lot of like specificity.
Yeah, so once you've run the ball over, you haven't scored. You has to be put down, has to touch the floor with downward contact in control. You can't drop it over. You can't just run it over and consider a touchdown like you do in American football, which does create a really intense sort of goal line structure, because a defense can get really aggressive and kind of hold you up. And if you're held up over the line, it's not a score and other things happen. But so you have to get that pressure down. In rugby or in rugby union, that's 5 points.
Okay.
From that, you have what we call conversion, very similar to American football, but you can only kick it. So you move the ball back, I think it's 20 meters, 15, 20 meters, and then you've got to try and kick it between the uprights. Our uprights are very similar to American football. Okay, in between the uprights, you get an additional 2 points.
Who's your kicker?
Typically, the kicker will be a 10, but it'll essentially be whoever's best at it.
Okay.
But again, typically it's the 10.
Is that why he's called the fly? Never mind. I thought it said fly ball, not fly half.
No, actually, no. Fly ball. You can get an additional 3 points from a penalty kick. So any point a penalties happen or gets called. So that's when you're offside or when you do an offensive tackle, and an offensive tackle, that's fine. You can get a kick, so the ball gets placed on the floor, or we typically use a cone to prop the ball up, and then you can kick it from there, and if you get between the posts, it becomes 3 points.
Okay.
And there's one additional one, which you don't see too often, which is called a drop kick. So at any point in the game, during open play, if you drop the ball and it bounces, then you kick it, and it goes between the posts, then it's 3 points as well. It's called a drop kick. It's a lot harder to do. You don't see them too often, but there has been instances where one of them has decided the World Cup. So
Damn.
It's a play that can be very useful in a tight game.
So there's really no reason why, like in that first game or whatever, or the Scotland versus UK, like it should have been 1-0.
No, I've got a feeling it was 1 try scored, and they just referred to it as 1 point back then.
Okay.
Like it used to be 3-1. It used to be the scoring system, but then penalties were scored differently, and it didn't quite make it fair. You could just do lots of penalties and win a game. Yeah. Often in games, you don't get any tries in this team because defenses are so good. You only score from penalties, so only score from kicking, which can be really boring. Scotland had a wee phase where we were not very good at scoring. In fact, I'm pretty sure there was like an era we had like 5 years where we didn't score at home ground, which is bad for Scotland. But we'll talk about Scotland in a bit. I'm trying to think. Any more questions about rugby? I know I've not gone over too many of the rules. Typically, officials, you'll have one referee who does the whole game, and you have sideline men on either side. International games or high-level league games, you've got officials in like boxes We also use one of the only sports that uses instant replay to decide. I don't know if American football actually does it, but we use instant replay to decide things. So they'll go to the people and decide on tries, high tackles, penalties, or things like that, and we can bring play back.
So the field's pretty big, and there's only one referee running back and forth. Like, he must be in pretty good shape.
Yeah, he gets a good run out. That's for sure. Yeah, it's pretty... Well, he just needs to stay near the gain line, but yeah, they do run about a lot. Refs are often in the way. I'm often running about the field. It's like, ref, I'm about to tackle this guy, you're standing right in my way, move. But I just...
So what kind of... Like, you can just open tackle anybody? Anybody you want? Just go up and tackle them?
You can only tackle the ball carrier.
Okay.
Nobody else can get tackled unless it's a ruck. Then you can make contact with anyone else. Other than that, you can't make contact with anyone.
Okay.
So only if you've got the ball in hand. You've got to tackle below the shoulders. Otherwise, it's referred to as a high tackle. And typically, there's a skill where you try and dip your shoulder, get into their stomach, wrap their legs up so they can stop moving, and you want to drive them back. So you want to hit with the initial lead foot, dip the shoulder into where they can fold in half, wrap the arms round the legs. We used to say cheek to cheek, so our cheek to the butt cheek, grab them, and then ideally you want what we call an offensive tackle. Well, that's not the same as what I said, but you have actionable offensive tackles where you tackle them back the way they came from, or you've got passive tackles where they're running at you and you tackle them and they fall forward or you fall back.
Okay.
You don't want passive because they make more yards. You want to have the aggressive bits. Tough when you've got a 240-pound guy running at you. That's one of the differences between us and American football. You get a lot of concussions in American football when you wear pads, but what allows them to do is hit each other with so much impact. All they're doing is looking to essentially hurt each other and stop each other. Whereas in rugby, we have a bit more of a skill-based tackle because you want to get back to your feet to try and win that ball. So it's not just about stopping them, because if you don't hold on to them, they can get back up. If you hold on to them, they have to let go of the ball, or like present it and let go of it.
Yeah.
And as a runner, you don't just get hit and drop. You want to drive through the tackle. No matter if someone's holding on to you, you want to try and break free, you want to try and get through. So it's not just about taking a knee like they do in American football. They get touched and they drop. Not always. I know they're aggressive as well. But that means because we've got a skill element and you don't have pads, the hits...
Less injuries.
The hits aren't quite as... We make sure we dip the shoulder and perform it right every time. Where sometimes they'll just run in, eyes closed, head first type thing. I know you're not meant to do that now, but it does happen. Yeah. Where we're trying to control the game because it's open play, it doesn't stop. So it requires a little bit more. In rugby league, they do have just tackle, stop, and they have more aggressive, some would say more less skillful, more damaging tackles in rugby league. All right, I think I've done enough at the moment. And we do have other things called mauls. We have free kicks. We have 22 dropouts. We have kickoffs at the start of the match. But I'm not going to go into much of that. I think you kind of got the idea. 15 men, fighting each other, forwards, bigger boys, creating rucks, backs, making the plays, shifting the ball back and forward, and try to open it up. Cool.
Sounds very interesting. I just want to watch it now.
Yeah, there's a lot to it, and it can be really confusing if you're like, even I sometimes, when I watch rugby, I'll be like, what the hell was that for? You know how sometimes in American football, like all these yellow flags getting thrown about, like what's going on? Same in rugby, like, why did that stop? But because it's in this what we call the ruck, you can't see anything. It's hard to really dictate. But that's rugby. Okay, I've spent 30 minutes trying to explain rugby. Phew. So, the IRB is the International Rugby Board. They tend to run the rugby, and they change the rules constantly. So, even from when I was younger, so many rules have adapted and changed.
Really?
And when you go, if you look, and due to these rules, the rugby has evolved massively. From the mid-90s, there was a lot of fat boys. It was all just about who's the toughest mother out there. You know, we used to stomp on each other, used to fight quite a lot. And now you throw a punch, you're automatically carded. You know, you're off.
Yeah. We
have yellow card and red card. Yellow card, you're in the sin bin for 10 minutes, very similar to hockey. And then if you get red card, you're out entirely. If you get 2 yellows, you get a red, same as football, and you can get a red straight up, depending on what you do. You don't see...
How do you get a red?
Typically, if you're punching someone, you'll get a red. If you stomp on someone, a good chance you'll get a red.
How do you get a yellow?
Yellow is like if you constantly do something like a high tackle, like even if it's backs in, if you do it off, even if you're offside multiple times in a row, you can get a yellow card.
Okay.
A few other things. Even if you kind of get into a scuffle but don't quite do anything that bad, you can get a yellow. If you speak back to the ref, you can get a yellow. So this is another thing we do. rugby is known as the thug sport played by gentlemen, and in comparison to soccer, which is the gentleman's sport played by thugs.
Okay.
Thugs, hooligans, whatever word you want to use. Because
Thugs.
this basically comes from because rugby's tend to play at private schools where the posh folk go. But the ref rules the roost, and you cannot speak back to the ref, you cannot shout to the ref, you can't swear to the ref, you have to refer to him as sir. You don't have to, but sir or ref. It's a very respectful sport in that manner. I don't know if you've ever seen soccer where you get the footballers running up to the ref and screaming and shouting, and just none of that happens. And it makes it a much more enjoyable game. And reasons why we can have mixed teams stadiums. It's not like you're half our half like it is in soccer. I don't know, it's like here with American football, I think it's mixed, but again, it's probably because you have officials officiating properly. And you can't disrespect them the same way. But anyway, where was I going with this? Oh yeah, so one of the reasons I started talking about this A is because I'm playing more rugby again after quite a long break, and B because Six Nations is going on. So
what are Six Nations? Is that like the World Cup?
Not quite. So there's a number of different rugby competitions as you expect through the world. The Rugby World Cup is the big one that happens every 4 years. It's only been going about since the mid-80s, I think.
Okay.
1987, I think, was the first one. So it's not had many of them. And top 12 teams from the previous World Cup, I think it's from the previous World Cup, are basically only 12 teams. This is not big as like the Football World Cup. Will compete off to see who wins. I think the last team won it was New Zealand. I can't quite remember when that last one was. 2015, I think it was. So would you win this year? Yeah. So there'll be a World Cup this year. That'd be good. There's also, so the next one's probably the Six Nations. Is that the next biggest? Probably the next biggest. It's actually one of the longest running competitions. It's been going on since 1883. However, it's had 3 different iterations. You had the home nations, which we spoke about: England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales. Then you had the 5 nations, which was England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales, and France. Okay. And that was played up until 2000, and then it became the 6 nations where we added Italy. So now it's the 6 nations of Europe, basically the bigger teams that play rugby. We have a whole bunch of other leagues, but I won't get into it. This is what I wanted to talk about.
Where is it being held this year?
So Six Nations is unique in the fact that it's always played with throughout the whole of the Six Nations. It's not held at one place or one stadium or anything like that. Well, it's played each nation has its own stadium. I want to see if I can get these stadiums right. I probably won't. You've got Scotland, who's got Murrayfield. You've got England, who's got a stadium called Twickenham. You've got Wales, who's got Millennium Stadium. You've got Ireland, which is the Viva Stadium. I'm sure it previously had a name. That's just a brand name. The France is the Stade de France. You've got one more, Italy, which is the Stadio Olimpico. So there are the 6 different stadiums, and they're played in every year. Essentially, Scotland will play all the 5 teams, and every year it'll take a turn about where they play. So 1 year they'll play England at Murrayfield, 1 year they'll play England at Twickenham, and the next year it'll be
those alternate.
So alternate all the way through that. So it's always at the same stadiums, always that way. They will play 2 games back to back, like 1 week, next week, have a week off, another game, week off, another game. I believe
all
that's
with
how
the
it
same
goes.
Team?
All with the different teams. So they all play each team once, and that's how they do it.
Yeah.
So this has been going on, as I said, for a fair few number of years, and there's a number of different. So this is where it gets really interesting. So you have the Six Nations Championship where you win it, and that's it's like a round robin. Everyone plays each other. Who's got the most points at the end wins.
Okay, so it's not like if you do bad on a game, you're voted out, like you're off.
No,
you keep playing.
So you can keep playing. Okay. You can lose your first 2 games and still win if things go a certain way.
Yeah.
So you get 4 match points are awarded for a win. 2 match points are awarded for a draw. You can get a bonus match point if you score more than 4 tries. And you can get a losing point if you are within 7 points or fewer of the team that wins. So, for example, if I score 4 tries but no kicks and I get 20 points, but the team I'm playing against gets 3 tries and 2 kicks, so that'll take them up to 16.
Yeah.
They'll get a losing bonus point, and I would get 4 for the win plus 1 for the bonus because I got 4 tries.
Okay.
I don't quite know the reasoning behind that. I guess it's maybe just to make it more exciting, or maybe make it so if you beat a team by more, that's reflected in your score.
Yeah.
Which I guess makes sense. So that will happen. Obviously, point difference will make a difference as well. that'll add into it. Both two teams on a similar score. Whoever scored more tries or points will win in total. Within the cups within the cup itself, there are actually a number of different other cups. The Triple Crown.
Okay.
So the Triple Crown is when one of the home nations, England, Ireland, Scotland, Wales, beats the other three nations in that one cup. It doesn't happen that often. I think England have probably done it most. No, Ireland probably did it most recently because I think Ireland did it last year. So the reason Ireland did it last year is because they actually did something called the Grand Slam. So the Grand Slam is when one team beats all the other teams and doesn't lose a game. So that's the Grand Slam. That happens, I'd say, once every average 2 or 3 years. So it's usually the team that the best do really well. You have the Triple Crown, which is if you beat all the home nations. If you do the Grand Slam, you automatically win that. Following that, we've actually got a whole bunch of different trophies. You've got the Calcutta Cup, which is only played between Scotland and England. So every time they play, the Calcutta Cup is given to the winner. You've got the Millennium Trophy, which is between England and Ireland. And again, the winner wins that. You've got the Centurion Quake, which is between Scotland and Ireland. Do you know what a quake is?
No.
It's like a wee bowl with like 2 wee handles at the side. It's like a Gaelic thing. So basically, whoever wins between them win that. And then we have Giuseppe Garibaldi Trophy, which is between France and Italy. So they have that trophy to give. You have the Auld Alliance Trophy, which is given to the winners between France and Scotland. So they are the trophies. So Scotland, England, Ireland, Scotland, Ireland, France, Italy, and then Scotland, France.
Okay.
They all have individual trophies that are awarded at the end of the games. I don't know, maybe it's just a fun wee thing to do. I'm not sure. Yeah. And then there's one more award as such, which is 2 teams kind of dominate getting this, which kind of sucks. I think only in 2003 has one other team got it. So it's called the Wooden Spoon. Man, you're yawning, you're tired, eh?
I'm so tired.
The Wooden Spoon is given to the team that basically sucks. That's one lost all their games. If you lose all your games, you get given the Wooden Spoon. Since the introduction of Italy, they've got it quite a lot.
Italy?
Yeah. So Italy have got it since 2000. So when Italy were introduced, they've got it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 times. Out of them.
That's so sad.
Yeah. Well, they were going to be take them a while to get up to standards. They've never won.
Because they were the last ones in.
They've never won the Six Nations, and it's always quite impressive if they get more than 2 wins in the competition. Closely followed by Scotland, who've had 1, 2, 3, 4 within the last 19 years.
But 4 versus 13.
Well, the thing is, Scotland always beats Italy. So every one of those 4 years, we probably lost to Italy, which kind of is like losing to the bad guy. We've been playing rugby since its inception, you know. Yeah. And then France have had it once, and Wales have had it once within that time as well. It's just anyway, funny wee things that are awarded.
Is it literally just a wooden spoon?
I don't know if they actually get. They probably do get a wooden spoon to some degree, but we're not the worst though. I think the Ireland has 29 wooden spoon awards over the whole kind of inception of the wooden spoon. Okay. Just we've had a lot more recently. And I said Italy have had 13, which is actually the least. But again, they've only been in it for 20 or 19 years, so it's quite funny. Grand Slams, England has the most of 13. Scotland has only 3. Our last one being in 1990, which kind of sucks. Which was a long time ago for a home nation team. Italy again never won it, and never won any of that.
Yeah, they've been busy getting the wooden spoon.
Nah,
they can't win the championship games and a wooden spoon at the same time.
Yeah, Italy are they're not a bad team. It's just the fact that the other teams are just
better.
Oh yeah, we've just been playing it for longer, so we have more of a sort of a lineage of rugby, from a young age and stuff. However, Italy does have the longest serving player. Sergio Parisse is one of their main players, and he's had 66 games. Which, if you think about it, they only play 5 games per year for the Six Nations. He's been doing it for over 10 years. He's been playing every game. So,
damn,
that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
If you ask me, that's 13 years. He's been playing it since their inception, essentially. Not quite. But yeah, that's a lot of rugby for someone. The Six Nations, is a great tournament. My sister, so women play rugby obviously as well. It's since the early 19th century. My sister's played for Scotland, so she's done a bunch of Six Nations herself.
Really?
She had a lot of good fun, so they'll go back. So I think she did 5 or 6 Six Nations before she retired from international rugby, and she'd go to France, Italy, Ireland, Wales, and all that stuff. She played one of the World Cups as well, but unfortunately that was in England. Yeah, so they got to do it. So half the time they got to play in the stadiums, half the time they didn't, because women's rugby wasn't so big. They'd sometimes play on another field, but she's played in Stade de France, and I'm not sure. I think she's played at Twickenham as well in Millennium Stadium. But some of the times they'll play after the men. Some people will stay and watch, some people not, which is kind of cool. I can't talk about rugby without talking about the Southern Hemisphere: New Zealand, Australia, South Africa, Argentina now, and some of Japan. They also have their own championships, which play. New Zealand are the current reigning world championships and are renowned for known to be one of the best teams in the world ever. Like, even though the years they haven't won the World Cup and stuff, they are known. You probably know them as the All Blacks. You've probably heard of them. Maybe not. Okay, well, the All Blacks, they're just really impressive rugby players. They've got the Maori kind of power. I don't know. It's just it's impressive. And Australia, really impressive as well, as are the Springbok, which are South Africa. So really, 3 really powerful teams. They tend to dominate, even when they play up against the European teams. England hold their own, and Ireland, Wales have the years, but they're pretty good down there. Don't quite know why, but they are.
Does that have any correlation with Australian football, like footy?
I would assume so. I don't know the conception of that. I don't know where that came from. But they have a mix between soccer, Gaelic football, rugby, and I'm assuming it's some sort of mix between it all.
It looks like a really cool sport.
Yeah.
I kind of want to play it.
It's massive. It's only massive. It's massive down there and only there. Nobody plays like anywhere else I've ever heard. It's a big oval field, which is really unique. They can kick the ball between the posts while running and bouncing the ball, and it's
there's all different. You can jump off of people and kick it.
Yeah, it's crazy rules.
Yeah, it kind of is like a mix between Quidditch and rugby and soccer, like you said, all these different things, and add Quidditch in there, and you're good.
Well, that's just it. You go into Australia, all the animals are weird as, and all the sports are weird as. But no, I would assume it's helped that, but I don't know about that at all. We could probably speak to Frank. Tell you
definitely a team here.
Oh yes, because you said your friend did play or knows of playing or something. Did you not?
She was there playing, but she suggested I find the team here and start playing.
Yeah, I've seen Gaelic football being played here, but I've not seen that. But I'm sure there probably is. I don't know who they play against. So that's the thing.
Yeah.
So you can't mention that. You can't not mention them. You've obviously got a whole bunch of other Pacific Island teams like Samoa and Fiji and Tonga, who have got really good, powerful teams as well, and a whole bunch of others. It'd be interesting to know. So New Zealand do the haka, which is their war dance, the haka. So their sort of traditional war dance that they do. Have you ever seen this?
No.
What? You've not seen a haka? Okay, so
I don't know very much about New Zealand.
The New Zealand and a bunch of other Pacific Islands do actually, which is it's a ceremonial dance which they do prior to the rugby. They actually learn it in school, and they do it for a number of different events. You will have seen it. A lot of Maoris and actually other, like Hawaii, I think, have their own version of it as well, actually. So it's a really impressive dance. But so this was done by New Zealand, I believe, to Wales in the early 19th century, might be okay. And in response to that, the Welsh team started singing their national anthem in response, and that was actually the first instance a national anthem was ever sung at the start of a sporting event, and from then on, it's been continued. So that's something I found out researching this, that rugby was the reason we sing our anthems at the start of sporting events. Kind of cool, yeah.
This looks like a very interesting dance.
It's really, really cool to see live. Like if you're sitting on a rugby field and you're just seeing these 15 men perform this, and the intensity that they do it with, and the kind of synchronization and all that, it's pretty impressive. As I said, I believe they learn it at school and stuff. So it's like you learning the Pledge of Allegiance, I guess.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
I'm going to watch it after this.
Yeah, do. All right. I think I've mumbled on enough. You had no talking going on there. I do apologize.
Is this mirror image, or is it here?
Yeah, mirror imaged.
Okay,
Yeah,
so it
so
would
she's
be like-
referring to the layout of the field that we spoke about. It would be mirror imaged, so the forwards would be in line with the forwards, and the backs would be spread out. Which,
Cool.
yeah, in that instance, 11 would be on the far side, and 14 would be on the. Oh no, I'm talking rubbish. No, yeah, it would be. So yeah, 14 would be on the right side, and 11 would be on the left side.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, well, listeners, I hope you guys maybe got something out of it, especially if you're not from a rugby playing nation, or if you're not familiar with rugby. It's a great sport. America, if you do live in here, we do have the American Rugby League now, which I think 12, I want to say 12, I might be wrong, cities from around America have put together a professional rugby team. Here in Houston, we've got Houston Sabercats.
Is it the one you're on?
No. Fortunately, no. They'd be pros, and they go around different cities around the whole of America. It's quite funny because quite a few of the team are foreigners, but that's to be expected, I guess, when you get initiation. But they try to push it a little bit. I should also mention there's another version of rugby called Sevens, which has 7 men playing on that same field against each other. That's actually included in the Olympics and the Commonwealth Games now. So a lot of countries are getting behind it a little bit more to get these teams into the Olympics to win.
Which do you like better?
I prefer 15 or like full, but 7s is fun. I like being fit and running around. I'm not quite as fast enough to do it, but I enjoy it a lot.
I think that was the one that I was told recently that you would not enjoy. I was talking about rugby.
What you'd not enjoy?
You would not enjoy.
I would enjoy. I've played 7s all my life. Okay. Yeah, it's good. My sister,
Maybe that wasn't it.
My sister was very good at rugby. She played 7s as well, and she went around the world, like to Dubai and to, I want to say Singapore, but maybe not Singapore, but to Russia and all these places playing 7s rugby as well. Yeah, that was cool. I think she had a better time doing that than she did Union. But anyway, all right. Anything to add?
Yes, I'm gonna come watch a rugby match.
Yes,
on
you should.
the pitch and watch the 15 people play and ruck.
Well, our next home game will be in a couple of weeks, and it's dead close.
Used?
Yes, ahead of all the rucks in the pitch. I didn't hear what that other one was. I started talking over you. I apologize.
I said 15 players.
Oh, 15 players.
See?
Yeah.
I knew everything.
You just got to know, just like learn the phrase, "Oh, ref, come on! What's that?" And we just use that a lot.
Okay. Yeah. I'll just start yelling that at the ref.
Oh, he's offside! Ref! We say that a lot.
I'm going to say it every time I see you move, but he's offside.
Yeah. Shits and hits, you got anything?
No.
No, me neither. I tried to listen to some new music. New Nina Nesbitt. I don't know if you're familiar with Nina Nesbitt. She's a Scottish singer. Went to Ed Sheeran for a bit. Made it relatively big-ish in the house sort of scene. It was alright. It wasn't my favourite album. A few more people I want to try and listen to more, but I've not had a chance. Not seen any TV. Me either. Actually, I started watching Brooklyn Nine-Nine again. So I got like 4 seasons in and I stopped. But not only because at that point it was only 4 seasons. There's another 2 or 3. You should watch it. Have you ever seen it? No. It's very funny. Okay. Like, it's not quite the same as like... I would say it's a mix between... You know, I can't even think of anything because it's not like The Office or anything. Okay. It's a bit much more sitcom-y based, but it's not like Big Bang. You know, it's a cop-based drama. Mm-hmm. It's a cop-based comedy, and Andy Samberg's really funny, and he plays really well. So I just watch it. I think you'd enjoy it. I've told you to watch so many things, you've not watched any of it. I started watching The Good Place. You started? We watched 1 episode in, or half the episode
3 episodes in. I am, but I haven't watched it in like 2 months. That was like
6 months ago.
I know. Have you started watching Psych yet?
Finished it. It was crap.
Then why is it not on your shits?
I should put it on my shit. My shits are Psych. I watched all 7 seasons, and it wasn't very good.
I'm not telling the truth.
Apologize, I've not seen it.
See, so you.
But that's like these are 20-minute episodes. That's an hour episode or something.
It's like 45.
45 minutes, and it's how many seasons?
8.
8 seasons. Are you?
And a musical.
And a musical.
And a movie.
Oh my god. I don't want to watch it.
It's so good.
I want comedy. Comedy's more better than...
Have you seen Community?
No.
It's good too.
Yeah, I know. I've been wanting to watch that for a while, but I haven't got around to it.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, well, Dan Harmon, the guy from Rick and Morty, he was one of the directors or something, community or writers or something. So you can, to me, I know it's good because he's pretty good on
it's hilarious.
Rick and Morty. Yeah. But he fell out, people got fired from it. But anyway, that's neither here or there. I will do. Okay. I think that's it for us today.
Yeah.
Yep. Hopefully you learned something about rugby.
I did.
Go express your knowledge on people. Express your knowledge? That'll be fine.
Go express it.
Yes. All right. I've been Liam.
And I'm Kayla.
And this has been Mumblecast.
Bye.